Hello and welcome to my first YouTube video about JavaScript. So I thought of starting these small videos because I've been getting a lot of requests from my peers and my team members to give more uh, knowledges and tips on how to write better application integrated codes. Right, so we see a lot of videos over the YouTube that covers the best practices and how to write JavaScript codes and what is and fundamentals about JavaScript. I'm not going to do all of those. I'm going to take very common use cases that are prevalent in the industry, and we will write some sample codes, sample solutions for that, and we will do the simple setup, and we will add the basic structure first, and then we will enhance it. We will add layers upon layers of further features on top of it, and we will try to make it a usable version of code that you can go and use tomorrow in your case. So to start with, we are going to do one of the most common uh, features in a server, that is sending automated emails. Now, of course, we don't need to say that what are the use cases for automated emails. It can be to send one-time passwords. It can be to send reset email links. It can be used to send, health temp alerts to the administrators. So what I do basically is I run some of my services at home, and I used to see this problem that I don't know when the service is up or down. So I started exploring areas by which I can do like a health checkup and then send the health as a report over email. So when I'm mobile, I will get the alert in my Gmail that the server has started, and I'm following your statuses. Is the database up and running? Is your services up and running? If there are any other third-party integrations, are they running? If there are any other services linked, are they running? Something like that. So we will take a very simple hello world email today. We will use one of the dummy email accounts I created in Gmail, and we will try to send. But before we go into the actual code, um, let's start with the um, let's start with the common protocols that are used over an email. So email is fairly old, all of us are aware of it. So we mostly have email clients at our systems for the professional purposes. Mostly it is Outlook. Sometimes it is Microsoft's own Apple's own email service. Sometimes it is Microsoft's own email application, or we use the web browser to open the online version of it, right? You have gmail.com as the perfect example of how you can access your email online. Now, let's talk about a scenario where you are having a client application like Outlook or Thunderbird. I just remember Thunderbird. It was from Mozilla, and I still use it. Uh, Very nice open source email application. So you want to send first, you want to receive emails from servers, and the other is to send emails out to servers, right? So we'll call our system client, and then we will have an email server. In a traditional fashion, there will be one email server residing somewhere in the either in the cloud or in an on-premise location, and you will have the IP address or the host name of it, and then you will have your own authentication, your own probably ID and password, and then you will want some tool with which you can send out an email. So let's say I want to send an email to Mr. A or Mr. B at or Mr. C, whatever it is, at hotmail.com, right? So I will need to tell the server that okay, the recipient is Mr. B at hotmail.com. I am Mr. A. This is my password. This is the subject of the email, and this is the body of the email, right? And then you will need to send this message out to the server. The server acknowledges it. Then the server will contact Hotmail and say, "Hey Hotmail, I have a message for Mr. A," right? And then Hotmail will say, "Okay, shoot the message." Then this server will send that message out to Hotmail, and Hotmail will say acknowledged or or delivered based upon the level of details the servers will provide. Then Hotmail will then have somehow some way to send that email out to the Mr. B client, or in this case, yeah, Mr. B at hotmail.com. So there will be some way by which the Hotmail server will tell Mr. B's client devices that you have a new email, right? So So there are two aspects, send and receive, right? So let's consider one server out there, right? And I want to send an email, I want to receive an email, right? So what happens is there are some famous protocols in the market: SMTP, POP3, and IMAP. SMTP is is most commonly used for sending. So you have SMTP, which stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. This is what we will be using today. We will be using SMTP protocols to send out an email from our service, from our application, commonly used for outbound or outgoing emails. Then you have IMAP, POP3. These are the protocols for receiving emails. As I said, right, you are sending the email out to Mr. A, right? So let's put a diagram over here. So Mr. A, Mr. A at test.com uses SMTP to send email to the server, mail server, right? And the mail server receives the email and uses POP3 or IMAP to send it to Mr. B at test.com client, right? So this is how it works. Now I will not type IMAP and POP3. As far as I remember, IMAP is Internet Message Accessing Protocol and POP3 is Post Office Protocol version 3. Now the root difference between these two is that IMAP actually synchronizes messages across devices. It's a more modern protocol than POP3, and it so happens that if you have two or three or more devices signed in, or more devices connected, that, that, that is to say, more connected to the mail server, then IMAP is the protocol of choice to send the email, because through IMAP protocol, it's more of a push or a fetch mechanism, right? Where as soon as there is a message in the server, all of the devices are simultaneously synchronized with the message, right? The core thing to remember is synchronization, which means the message still remains at the server and it is accessed by the client devices. POP3 on the other hand was an older protocol which was mostly a single client device and the server. In that you have the mail is actually sent or transferred to the client device and it is downloaded in the client device. The mail is lost at the server side, so you won't be able to retrieve the email in another device. That's how POP3 works. The biggest advantage of POP3 is offline capabilities. So if you have synchronized the email, it will be available in your offline device as long as you want to keep it. So this was fairly older protocol where there was most likely one device connecting for one email account, but most modern devices will use IMAP. In future, if I ever build a sample application to listen to email, so we will be preferring IMAP over POP3. Now this is the overview. There are some other details about how the server and how the port numbers work, how to specify the SSL and non-SSL ports, and how to do authentication. We will come to them one by one. Now, how do we send an email from an application, from a Node.js, right? So after doing a fair bit of research, I found there was one application, very basic application called Simple SMTP. It is deprecated now. Instead of that, there is a famous service called NodeMailer, which is actively maintained. Now, NodeMailer is almost like Passport. It has several different transport services, or rather to say, they have pre-built protocols inside the NodeMailer library. You won't have to worry about it. So let's say you want to use Gmail as your email server. You can just specify service is Gmail, and you can just set the username and authentication keys. That will be enough. But that doesn't mean that we cannot use custom servers. Of course we can. I have personally used it In case of custom servers, we will just provide the necessary details, the port numbers, and the host names and everything, and the node mailer will still work as it is. There is another way of sending emails when you do not have access to SMTP services, or have access to the email credentials, or you want to use a managed service, that is SendGrid. SendGrid is a very famous email service. I have also done codes which use SendGrid as a transport mechanism. We will still use NodeMailer as the library, NodeMailer as the API from the Node.js point of view, with which you will send the email, but the NodeMailer is pre-configured or auto-configured via SendGrid. In SendGrid, you will only get an API key. You will not get a username password, just an API key when you register and set up your emails over there. So what you will do is you will create the mail payload. By payload, I mean that thing we talked about, to, from, subject, and send. After that, you will just say, this is the SendGrid API key. Please use SendGrid services to send this email. So they will then hit the SMTP SendGrid's SMTP server, and SendGrid will internally figure out how to connect to Gmail or Hotmail or your personal services to deliver the email. This is very convenient, but this comes at a price. SendGrid is not free. So we will explore both the options. So let's say tomorrow you have a requirement which you already have got an SM, for which you have got an SMTP server. So you will see how to write code for that. And if your application or a company uses SendGrid, then the NodeMailer is definitely one option. There could be other possibilities in the market or in NPM.js marketplace, which will give you even simpler way of sending the email. So we will start with the more complicated one first, just using plain and simple SMTP through Gmail, and then we will move towards SendGrid. Right. So let's get started. So we'll pause the video here and we will start when I am ready.